Good morning, everyone. Your morning weather briefing for this July 27th finds that there are no major changes in the forecast versus what I presented yesterday. Temperature and rainfall outlooks this morning, still a general lack of heat in the forecast in the Corn Belt for at least another week or so, at least through the first 2 or 3 days of August. But after that, we are going to be seeing a warming trend, and my own 11 to 15-day temperature forecast continues to inch its way warmer as we get more of the cool weather in the near term forecast, and the models continue to indicate some warming temperatures for around August 5th and beyond. Not any big changes in my 6 to 10 and 11 to 15 day rainfall forecast. Details of those forecasts still have to be worked out this morning. QPF discussion for the 1 to 5 day time frame. I'm not going to be having any major disagreements versus what this forecast shows. Probably would shave a little bit off of the rainfall forecast in southern and southwestern portions of Iowa, but otherwise I'm not really going to have any major disagreements versus what is shown. This is certainly a rare look to the QPF map for the hard red winter wheat belt when you consider that it is the middle of summer, but the rainfall situation there for today right through the end of the weekend looks every bit as good as this map shows. Note that most of the rainfall in the Corn Belt through the end of the weekend is going to be confined to Nebraska, Kansas, and western Missouri. All of the rest of the rainfall that is shown for the southern Corn Belt is going to be arriving for the Monday-Tuesday time frame. It is also going to be those 2 days when most of the rain shown for the Mid-South starts to fall. Day 6 to 7 day QPF discussion for this morning. Weather maps in good agreement that a big portion of the middle of the country is going to be drying out for the Wednesday-Thursday time frame of next week. Afternoon high temperatures yesterday. Note the very cool conditions that we're seeing yesterday across the northern portions of the Corn Belt. Note that a lot of Minnesota and nearby areas had high temperatures yesterday afternoon that stayed in the 60s. Still some big heat, though, in far southern portions of the Plains states with 100 plus degree temperatures continuing for far southern Oklahoma and areas to the south of there. Rainfall totals through 1 o'clock this morning, fairly scattered in nature across a big portion of the middle of the country, and you can see that on the radar estimated rainfall map this morning as well. Any rain on the radar this morning, early on this Friday, remains quite widely scattered in the middle of the country. Most of the Corn Belt, of course, seeing nothing at all. As far as the forecast is concerned, again, for especially tonight through Tuesday, we are looking at a significant rainfall event impacting western and especially southern portions of the Corn Belt, and that is all due to a upper level system that is going to be slowly working its way eastward through the middle of the country at that time. The look of that upper level system as of 7 o'clock in the morning on Monday, that system is not going to be moving too much and probably is going to be deepening some, so at 7 o'clock in the morning on Tuesday, still a situation where especially areas east of the Mississippi River looking at significant rainfall at that time. So looking at 1 to 5 day rainfall forecasts, models in fairly good agreement this morning that especially southern portions of the Corn Belt are going to be looking at a significant and widespread rainfall event over the next 5 days. The same can be true for the hard red winter wheat belt and eventually getting into the mid-south and southeast as well. Nebraska, Kansas, Missouri, central and southern Illinois, central and southern Indiana, and Ohio are my favorite areas for rainfall in this period. That area seeing lots of half to inch and a half rainfall amounts and locally even heavier than that. Any bigger totals of 1.5 inches or more probably going to be seen in portion of Nebraska, Kansas, and western Missouri. Again, a solid, significant, or even heavy rainfall event for the hard red winter wheat belt for later on today through the weekend with some severe weather, a good bed in portion of that area, especially over the next 24 hours. Some very good rains getting into the mid-south as well for the Monday-Tuesday time frame of next week. Temperature-wise, still a general lack of heat in the forecast for the central and northern plains and the Corn Belt through the opening 2 to 3 days of August. Looking at your temperature anomalies for today, decidedly cool conditions below and much below normal temperatures dominating the Corn Belt and central and northern plains. Note the extensive area there, seeing temperatures on this Friday averaging more than 10 degrees below normal. Now, cool weather, as I said, going to be lasting through the opening 2 to 3 days of August. This is the temperature anomaly forecast for next Thursday. Still a lot of the nation's midsection looking at below normal temperatures at that time. With regards to the rainfall forecast for the 6 to 10 and 11 to 15 day time frames, as usual during the summertime, it is difficult to be talking about a lot of specifics. Right now, for the 6 to 10 day period, I'm not going to be ruling out some rain in some portion of the Corn Belt at any day during that time frame, but again, it is the details that have to be worked out. Let's look at surface features from the European model on the left and the GFS model on the right for 7 o'clock in the morning next Thursday. You can see that at that time, the European model suggesting somewhat of a rain system moving through the Corn Belt at that time, somewhat of a rain system also being shown by the GFS at that time. It doesn't look like much on the models themselves, but in a situation like this, one has to wonder if maybe the models are not underdoing things, given that the event is still 6 days away. Surface features for the weekend for the 7 o'clock time frame on August 5th could be a situation where we could actually see some ring of fire activity at that time. From the European model there on the left, note that we do have a fairly significant area of heat in the southwestern Corn Belt with some semblance of some rainfall working over top of that heat in ring of fire activity fashion. Same thing kind of shown on the GFS model as well. There's your heat in southwestern portion of the Corn Belt and the ring of fire activity going over the top of that. So at this point, again, not going to be ruling out rainfall in some portion of the Corn Belt at any day in the 6 to 10 day time frame. Models themselves not overly emphatic on the type of rains that would fall. In general, the models would suggest that it would be southwestern portion of the Corn Belt that would have the least chances of rainfall in that time frame. Better chances to the northeast of there. The models themselves not overly emphatic on rainfall amounts and coverage. But again, in a situation like this, especially if, and that's a big if, of course, we can see ring of fire activity for next weekend, that would certainly be a situation where the models could be underdoing the type of rainfall amounts and coverage that is seen. For the 11 to 15 day time frame, looking at 500 millibars for the beginning of the 11 to 15 day period, kind of a broad area of upper level high pressure in southern portion of the nation. Jet stream or the storm track would definitely be running over top of that. One would have to believe that if there are some disturbances in the storm track at that time, it would be a relatively favorable setup for rainfall for a decent portion of the Corn Belt. For latter portion of the 11 to 15 day time frame, the dome of high pressure or high pressure aloft kind of contracts more towards southwestern portion of the nation. Once again, the storm track or a northwesterly flow still indicated to flow directly over the Corn Belt at that time, so would still, in my mind anyway, be keeping alive fairly significant rainfall chances in the Corn Belt throughout the 11 to 15 day time frame. Looking at temperature anomalies longer term, again, generally cool weather in the Corn Belt through the opening 2 to 3 days of August, but beyond that, probably more normalization in temperatures for August 4th, I should say, and then more above normal temperatures for August 5th and beyond. And I will note that the models in general are in better agreement today on the type of heat that is going to be seen. Again, we saw yesterday that the Canadian ensemble and more so the GFS ensemble, not too emphatic on the type of warmth that would be seen, but those models have definitely come around more to the European model thinking this morning. You can see that a fairly extensive area of above normal temperatures now suggested for the August 6th time frame on all of the ensembles this morning, and that would be above normal temperatures that will likely continue for the rest of the 11 to 15 day time frame. Internationally this morning, the forecast is trending a little bit wetter for summer row crop areas of the former Soviet Union. Note that most of that rainfall is in the second week of the 2-week time frame. A lot of eastern Ukraine and areas to the east of there are going to be completely dry for today through Wednesday. But again, the forecast after that has turned wetter. Could be some fairly decent rains in the latter portion of the 6 to 10 day time frame and into the 11 to 15 day period for the summer row crop areas. Generally above normal temperatures dominating the 1 to 5 day time frame. A lot of 90 plus degree heat in southeastern Ukraine and southern district. Temperatures then moderating for the 6 to 10 and especially the 11 to 15 day time frames. In Europe, still a situation where we are looking at nice rains over the next 2 weeks in the eastern portion of Europe. Fairly decent totals in Poland. Very nice totals going to continue in the southeastern corn areas of Europe. But to the west of there, this is a decidedly dry and very warm or even hot weather pattern for Western Europe for the duration of the 2-week time frame. Various modest rainfall threats in the 10-day forecast for Western Europe, or even longer than that, should be given that area very meager amounts of rainfall. Would expect that most of France for the entirety of the 2-week time frame, looking at rainfall totals of under a half inch. Saw extensive areas of 90 plus degree heat over the last 24 hours across a large portion of Western Europe. A number of places in France and even Western Germany getting above 95 degrees. The temperature forecast overall for the next 2 weeks running decidedly warmer than normal all across Europe. Look at the high temperatures again for this Friday. Going to be very similar to what we saw yesterday. Lots of 90 to 100-degree heat across good portions of France and into Germany. Yesterday's temperatures and those of today may be overall the very warmest conditions that we see in the entirety of the 2 week time frame, but we'll probably never completely get rid of the 90 plus degree heat in especially Western Europe through the end of at least the 10-day time frame. Not an especially dry, wet forecast for spring grain areas of the former Soviet Union. Pretty light amounts of rainfall there for the next 10 days. Forecast looks to feature near to below normal rainfall across the corn and soybean areas of China during the next 10 days. For at least the next week, minimal rain is going to be seen all across the Manchurian corn and soybean areas, and beyond that, any decent rain is going to be falling in Heilongjiang, with areas to the south of there remaining mostly dry through at least the end of the 10-day time frame. For the North China Plain, did see some nice rains yesterday across a decent portion of the North China Plain, and more of that will fall through the weekend. After that, though, the forecast turns decidedly dry for the North China Plain, above normal temperatures all across Chinese growing areas for the next 2 weeks. For the Canadian prairies, near to below normal rainfall there for the next 2 weeks. Decidedly dry conditions there over the next week. Then some increase in rainfall across the Canadian prairies for late next week through the 11 to 15-day time frame. Some warmth across the Canadian prairies on Monday, otherwise a lack of heat in their 2 week forecast. For Australian wheat areas, this is probably one of the wetter forecasts that we've seen there for quite some time, even though it's not overly wet, as you can see from this map. Mostly near normal rainfall across most of the wheat areas. Some of that rainfall going to be seen in Western Australian wheat areas as well as wheat areas of South Australia and Victoria over the next week, with minimal rains continuing in New South Wales. Most of the rainfall that is going to be seen in New South Wales coming during the second week of the 2 week time frame. Finishing things up for your Friday, the Indian monsoon not looking overly robust over the next 2 weeks. Any decent rains that is going to be falling during that time frame confined to just far northern and far northeastern areas. A big portion of India looking at decidedly below normal rainfall for the next 2 weeks, especially as you go further west and south. That's what I have for your Friday. Everyone have themselves a great day and an even greater weekend.